Linear Equations, Part 4. In today's lesson, students will determine the y-intercept and the slope of a line to write a linear equation. To write a what? Very good. Every line has a slope. The slope is a measure of how steep a line is. And we can calculate this by looking at a line and counting the number of units we rise up on the y-axis and run over on the x-axis. Slope is written as a fraction because it is a rate of change, where rise is the change in the y values divided by run, which is the change in the x values. In the line that you see, it rises up 4 units and runs over 1 unit to the right to get from one point on the line to the next. So this slope is written as 4 divided by 1, or 4. We can use the slope and the y-intercept to put into an equation known as slope-intercept form. We can use this equation to graph any point on a line. To write an equation in slope-intercept form, first look at the graph and identify the y-intercept. Here you see that the y-intercept is -2. From the y-intercept, we rise up 3 units and run over 1 unit to the right to get to the second point on the line. So the slope is 3 over 1, or 3 divided by 1 is 3. So we write this equation as y equals 3x minus 2. Let's take a look at example 1. In example 1, we see a line and we're asked to identify its y-intercept. It's what? Y-intercept. The slope of the line, the what? Slope, which is rise over run. What slope? Rise over run. And then we're asked to take the y-intercept, which is represented as b, and the slope, which is represented as m, and put it in the slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So we're first always going to start with the y-intercept. We're going to start with what? The y-intercept. All right, so when we take a look at this line, which one of the points is on the y-axis? Which one is on the y-axis? It's this point right here, right? What do we call this? We call this the y-intercept. And the y-intercept has a coordinate point. So you can see the y-intercept starts when x is 0. So we're going to start at 0 and go up how many? 1, 2. Excellent. So the y-intercept is 0, 2. Awesome. And from the y-intercept, you can figure out the slope. The slope is rise over run. It's what? Rise over run. Now, rise over run, rise can either be up or down, and run could be left or right. So we have some points to choose from, right? You only need 2 points, but here we have 3. So I'm going to show you 2 options, and they're both pretty easy. If you think about rise, rise is what's happening on the y-axis. So you have to rise up, yeah, and run over 1 on the x-axis. So it would be like this. Rise up 1 and over 1. Yeah? Kind of looks like a triangle, right? Go up 1 and over 1, right? And this could continue in this direction. Up 1, over 1. Would that be a point on the line? Yes. Up 1 and over 1. Up 1 and over 1. However, you could also go in the reverse, right? So you could also go down 1, which is basically rising down, and running over 1. So when you go down 1, it's -1, and when you go over 1, it's -1, okay? So when we look at rise over run here, we have to recognize that this is a positive slope because it is going up 1 and over 1, right? So we're going to write 1 over 1. Now that is the same, just so that you know, as -1 over 1. Because what is negative divided by negative? Negative divided by negative is positive. So they're actually both 1. And 1 divided by 1 is what? It's 1, okay? So now we're going to take the slope. We're going to put it in y equals mx plus b. Follow me. So m, which is rise over run, is written as a fraction. The rise divided by the run, all right? So we can write 1 over 1. However, this is actually just 1, or it could be invisible. You could write it as x by itself. Let's take a look at the y-intercept again. The first thing we found was b, correct? B, if you remember, was 0, 2, or the y-intercept is 2, right? When I talk about the y-intercept, I'm just actually talking about this number right here, which is 2. So we're going to write plus, what's the y-intercept again? It's 2. And then I want you to put a box around this final equation. Okay, so this means that if you started at 2 and you go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, or from the y-intercept going down 1 and to the left 1, down 1 to the left 1, that you can actually get any coordinate point on this graph, okay? Now let's look at example 2. Remember, always start with the y-intercept. Start where? The y-intercept. So if we start at the y-intercept, we have this point right here, right? What is this coordinate point called? You're starting at 0 and going down how many? Going down 1, 2, 3, right? Okay. So the y-intercept is 0, negative 3. Everybody have that? Okay, and we agree that that is 0, negative 3. Okay? I'm just going to go ahead and label it 0, negative 3. Yes? All right. So from that point, which is the y-intercept, we are going to rise and run. So here, we're going to rise up and run over. We rise and we run to get to the next point that would be on the line to determine up the slope. So how much would we rise up here? How much would we rise up? We would rise up how many? 1, 2. Rise up 2, right? And how many would you run over? You would run over only 1, okay? And that pattern continues. Up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And again, in the reverse direction, okay, this is a positive slope because the line is going up, right? And when it goes up and over to the right, then it's a positive slope. However, you could continue finding points on the line by doing the reverse, which would be negative 2 down 2. And then how many would you go over to the right? Negative 1, right? Okay, so it is the same. So the slope, if we remember, is up 2, rise up 2, run over 1. So the slope is 2 over 1, which is the same, you have to know, as negative 2 going down 2 and then to the left 1, right? Going up 2 and over 1 to the right is the same as going down 2 and over 1 to the left. You see that? Okay. Either way, this rise over run, this is a division sign, so it's saying 2 divided by 1. What is 2 divided by 1? 2 divided by 1 is 2. So when we take m and put it back where the slope needs to be, which is y equals mx plus b, you could write it as 2, all right? But for today's purposes, we're going to write it as 2 over 1 because it's showing that we're rising up 2 and running over 1 on the x-axis. And then we go back to the y-intercept. The y-intercept is what? It's negative 3, correct. So we would say negative 3 is b. Putting a box around that final answer, the equation for the line then, okay, because we found the slope, and we found the y-intercept is y equals 2x, or 2 over 1x, minus 3. Go ahead and get that down. Let's take a look at number 3, okay? So where are we going to start? We're going to start where? The y-intercept. Let's take a look at this point. What is this point on the coordinate point? What is the y-intercept? It is starting at 0, going up how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. So here the y-intercept is 4, okay? So you can say that B is 4, but the y-intercept, the coordinate point, is 0, 4. From that point, okay, we're going to find the slope. We're going to rise and run to the next point that is on the line, all right? And you can see we have two choices here. Do you think this is a positive slope? It's going up, right? How many does it rise and run over? Let's take a look. It would go up 1, yeah, it would go up 1 and over 2, right? So it's going to go up 1, if I show you up 1, and over 2 units on the x-axis. So on the y-axis it goes up 1. On the x-axis it moves to the right 2. All right? So simply that is 1 over 2. Right? Rise up 1, go over 2. Could it also go in the negative direction though? Or not in the negative direction, but in the opposite direction. Could it also, to get to this point, what would you have to do? Go down how many? Down 1. That's right. You could also go down 1, negative 1. And then you would go over to the left, negative 2. So you'll see that it could also be negative 1 divided by negative 2. However, because negative divided by negative is positive, this is a positive slope, okay? So we'll go ahead and use the positive 1 over 2 because positive 1 over 2 is the same as negative 1 over negative 2 because negative divided by negative, if you remember Mr. Bob, negative divided by negative is positive, right? Okay. So what is the slope? What's m? What are we going to write? What are we going to write? We're going to write what? 1, we're going to write it as a fraction. 1 over 2, or 1/2, 1 divided by 2. Yeah? And what is the y-intercept? The y-intercept is not 0, 4, it's 4, right? We're just going to use that y value right there. So, plus 4. Okay, perfect. And that would be the equation for the line. Meaning, if we start at 4, and we rise up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, every single one of these points, to get from one point to the other, you would just rise up 1 and over 2, or in the negative direction, down 1 and over to the left 2. That would also work. Okay? Get that down. Let's take a look at our final example, example number 4. And let's start to find the equation by looking for the y-intercept. So what is the y-intercept of this line? Which is, what is the point that crosses the y-axis? So we look at the y-axis, oh, and this one is at 0, negative 1. That's right, 0, negative 1. Great. Now, from the y-intercept, we can find the slope. We can find the what? The slope, which is rise over run. So we can rise, how many do we have to rise up and run over? We're forming a triangle, okay? How many do we rise up and run over to get to this point here? We are going to rise up. 1, 2, 3. Rise up. 1, 2, 3. Right? 1, 2, 3 units, yeah? How many are we going to run over? We're going to run over how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. Do we see that? See now? Bigger triangle. Up 3, over 4. Now, could we also go, could we rise, could we go down on the y-axis? We could go down. Would it be the same? How many do we go down? 1, 2, negative 3. There we go. We're going down 3. And how many over to the left? How many units over to the left? We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So, you're seeing the same thing, right? The slope is rise over run. Again, what are you doing on the y-axis? And then what are you doing on the x-axis? So what is the slope? The slope is what? 3 over 4, or what else could it be if you want to keep going in the reverse direction? It would be negative 3 over negative 4, right? Negative 3 over negative 4. However, negative divided by negative is positive. So we're going to keep the slope. This fraction is 3/4. So what is the slope? What is m? It's 3/4. Okay? So we're going to write 3/4. And what is the y-intercept? The y-intercept is negative what? 1. So this means if we use this equation then, we could find any graph on the line by starting at -1, going up 3/4, and if I did it again, up 3, 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4, I would also end up at a point on the line, right? Because the line's going to go on forever, and it's going to continue to have the same slope starting from -1.